Good morning, guys. So this is my first video for sand and filling the stock. I'm going to try and get these videos as best quality as I can. This is definitely not the best situation, but I think putting these videos together, it can give you guys a pretty good perspective of how I do things, how I was taught how to do things, and should get you guys pretty much prepared and knowledgeable for next year at any time you have to go through and do some stock finishing. So let's talk about stock finishing for a minute and how often you're going to come across it. In today's market as a rifle builder, you're not going to come across it very often. If you were to get into a niche market where you're looking at possibly building high-end dangerous game rifles or whatnot, you can go into that. That's a market that I haven't looked at as exploring. I'm not sure how much money is in that market. I really haven't looked at that. In my experience so far building rifles, the market tends to be composite stocks. Okay, it tends to be a laminated stock, and it's trending towards the chassis stocks. So that will be a final test question. The stocks that are out there, there's 4 basic stocks that you're going to look at as far as being a rifle builder. There's a wood stock, there's a chassis stock, there's a laminated stock, and there's a composite stock. So that is a test question, okay, coming up. How often a wood stock comes out? It's just really not. I'll be honest with you. I have yet to have a customer that come in and ask me, hey, I would like you to put together a beautiful Carlo walnut 270 for my wife. It hasn't happened. And one of the main reasons is because of the cost of putting together a walnut stock. There is a lot of stuff that goes into putting one of these together. The main thing that goes into putting one of these together is all the effort with the sanding and finishing. Okay, there's also checkering. One of the big reasons why I don't really do a lot of these is because a straight walnut stock doesn't look all that great, I think, without checkering. It looks incomplete. And checkering is something that I would say at least 95% of your custom rifle builders will send out. And you guys have all heard me say that I don't like giving up any step of the process. So, it's just something that I don't really do. And if you guys choose to get into checkering, it's a very high niche type thing. A lot of guys who checker I know also do engraving. But I think that it's just one of those things that you just don't come across very often. So one of the processes about finishing your stock is sanding and filling the grain, okay? Now, if you don't sand and fill the grain, and if you just apply a stain to this and then you apply your oil finish over the top of it, it's one of those things where in your shop here it might look kind of cool, but when you get out in the sun, it's going to look horrible. All the little grain that's in the stock, all the little open-ended pores that are in the stock are really going to show when it reflects light outside. So you really have to fill the grain of that stock, and filling the grain of that stock is what gives it that tabletop glass type appearance, okay? If you don't have that grain filled, it's going to have kind of a splotchy type experience, or splotchy type look to it. So try and think of this as a necessary part when you're working with wood. Now, a lot of you guys in the beginning of the video, you saw the laminated stock that I have. That's the same stock that you guys have, a lot of you have. The process to finish that laminated stock is pretty much the same that you're going to use on a walnut stock. Now, laminate stock doesn't have near as much pores, open pores, actually any really, open pores as a walnut stock, but the process is still the same. If you were to get a stripped down version of one of those stocks, a laminated stock, whether you get it from Boyd's or whether you have a client that wants a laminated stock and he wants to have it duplicated or something like that into a stock, that is something that I did have a potential customer say. He was He was a professional hunter, and he was looking at a dangerous game rifle, and he wanted it into a laminate stock because fragile walnut, when he was over there, composite was something he didn't really like the character of. A laminated stock is, in my opinion, hands down the most versatile and durable stock you can buy. So those are two things for me as a builder, really, versatile and durable. There's more glue and more resin in a laminated stock than any composite stock. I'm trying to think if it's possible to even jump up and down and break a laminate stock. And that's what this hunter was really thinking of. He was thinking of a .458 Winchester Magnum into a laminated stock, and he wanted it to have it duplicated, this stock blank, this laminated stock blank, and would have it duplicated and inletted. And so the process of finishing that is pretty much the same as what we do with walnut here. There's not as much grain that goes into finishing it, but the process of whiskering it, sanding in the grain, and applying your finish and then applying your oil is all the same. So, and any of the stuff here we're going, I want you guys to view this video and then ask questions on our Zoom meeting, okay? Because this is just the first one, and any questions that you might have, we'll make sure you take notes in this video, and then ask them in our Zoom lecture meeting. So the one step that I'm going to omit in this video is the whiskering of the stock. That is the very first step, and that applies whether you're going to laminate it or you're going to do a walnut stock, okay? Whiskering the stock is where you're going to apply a mixture to the stock, apply heat to it, and then get the grain to raise, okay? And what that does is when that grain raises and you're applying that mixture, it seals in the stock. It's what helps it becomes, impervious to weather. Okay, and what you're going to do when you do that, and this is the first step of finishing your stock, is you're going to apply a 2/3 mixture of mineral spirits and a 1/3 mixture of whatever finish you decide. Okay, we'll get into this finishes here in a second, but that's the first step. Okay, and when you apply that in there, you apply your 2/3 mineral spirits, 1/3 finish to your stock. You're going to apply heat to it. And you can apply heat with a heat gun, you can apply heat with a stove. Please be careful because it is flammable, but be careful when you're gonna get heat applied to it somehow. Okay, and that heat is gonna raise the grain, and when you go through to sand and fill this, you're gonna get the mud that you're using to fill the grain in the stock, okay? So let's talk a little bit about finishes, okay? Because the finish that you apply is with these items right here, okay? So right up here is basically what I have when I'm getting into finishing either a walnut stock or a laminated stock. So after I have whiskered the stock, okay? After I have applied my 2/3 and 1/3 mixture, okay, to whisker the stock, and after it has whiskered and it is dried, the next step I'm going to go through is I'm going to sand and fill the grain, okay? And I'm going to use my combination of stuff here, okay? So what I have right here is my odorless mineral spirits, okay? That is the basis of, that's kind of what's going to water down your finish. Very important, okay? And what I have next is whatever I decide I'm going to finish it in, okay? This is a Watco Danish oil. You could use that. This is a natural. This is your antique oil finish, all stuff that we've discussed and we've gone over in lecture, okay? And this is what I use, a Minwax wood finish red oak. I like to use red oak because red oak mimics a lot of the classic red-brown finishes that you see in hunting guns and in rifles, and shotguns too, for that matter. And this is, I don't know, maybe $3-4 or something at a hardware store. Whereas this, which comes from Brownells, this is classic gunstock finish, and this is red brown. This is something like $30. I think I got 2 stocks out of it. Okay. This is another product right here. You can't really see it. This is SB McWilliams. This is a London blend. This is sort of a varnish type finish. I haven't really come across a rifle yet that I would use that. But these are all examples of stuff that you can get. These 2 things right here, you're going to have to get, these are specially online orders. This stuff right here, you can get at your hardware store, which is one of the reasons why I like it, because you can just go to the hardware store, and I think for these 4 items right here I was able to get for the price of one of these bottles, okay? So that's something else to think when, you know, in the process of being, you know, a rifle builder. You got to think about where you can save some money as well. So let's get into the process of sanding and finishing this stock, okay? So I'm going to go on the assumption right here that that I've already whiskered this stock. Okay, I've already sanded it. I've already, you know, did my 2/3 and my 1/3, or my 2/3 and my 1/3, and I've applied it to the stock. I've applied heat to it. The stock has been whiskered. The grain has come up on the stock, and now I'm going to go through and I'm going to sand the stock with my finish and start filling in the grain. Okay. So one thing I thought I forgot. Let me get my gloves. This is kind of a messy procedure here. So what I do is I get you don't have to use gloves as you want, you know, you could use the, you know, palm of your hand. That's the way Alan taught me, but, you know, your skin is an organ and it absorbs all that chemical, so I don't like doing that. You can use paper towels as well. Something that's not too abrasive. I think, you know, any napkin that you might get at a fast food restaurant, even though they're all closed now, is something you could use too, right? You could also use that to fill in the grain. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sanding the stock. We're going to work in these little spotches like this, and then we're going to take our hand after we've made a mud over the top of it, and we're going to push it in and fill the grain, okay? And we're going to just continue working up, all right? So what I do is I take a piece of sandpaper, okay? This is 320, okay? What you're gonna end up doing here is you gotta figure out where you wanna stop, all right? You could take and do a 220 finish and do the same thing here and just sand the mud off later and have a very rough sort of basic type finish. Or you continue to work your progressions up in your sandpaper. Okay, so I'm gonna start with 320, and by the time I finish with this, I would probably be around a 600, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with 320, and I cut these strips like this, and I fold them over just like in the video that I sent you guys, okay? I fold them over abrasive end to paper end, okay? Abrasive end to paper end, right? So that way the abrasive part's never rubbing against another piece of abrasive part, okay? And I just fold it over simply just like that, okay? I then take some sort of container or vessel here, and it's gonna have my mixture in it. Now, when I'm getting ready to sand and fill the grain, my mixture changes from 2/3 and 1/3 that I use to whisker the stock to a 50-50 mixture, okay? Now, it's important that you go with your mineral spirits 50-50 to whatever your finish is, because if you apply a straight finish and you're filling in the grain, it will literally take 2-3 weeks between coats, because you have to wait for this to be completely dry before you go through and apply another coat, before you go through and sand out the rest of your mud marks. Okay, we'll get into mud marks in a minute. So it's very important that you do a 50-50, okay? Whether you're working with your antique oil finish, your Danish oil, your stain, or your mineral, the linseed oil, right? Whether you're going with that, you still have to cut it 50-50. If you go a straight oil, straight finish, whatnot, you literally takes at least a week for all that stuff to finish up. Now, if you've got 2, 4, 5, 6 rifles going in your shop, that aren't gonna be a big deal. You can go through and use your oil, finish it up, set it off to the side, and go work on other projects. But you know, if you've got 1, 2 rifles going, that's kind of a long time, downtime, you know, on your stock. If you've got downtime on your stock, then you've got downtime where you're not getting paid. So that 50-50 mixture is very important when you're going through the sanding and filling the stock, okay? So what we'll do is we're gonna take this part right here, you got your paper folded over, okay? And this is my 50-50 mixture here, okay? And I keep repeating that because that's gonna be a test question, okay? It's my 50-50 mixture here, okay? And this stock, by the way, is I believe a California walnut. It's for Remington Model 7 action, and I bought it for I think 25 bucks from a garage sale, and I just never have done anything with it. It's something I'm gonna keep working on, but I just haven't done anything with it. So, but for the demo, it's, you know, works pretty good. So you're gonna take your mixture, you're gonna set it up in here, all right, and you're gonna start sanding, okay? And you're gonna sand just like in that video I sent you guys. You guys are you're gonna sand in one area, and you're just gonna keep working this one area, okay? Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a mud, a slurry, with all of this finish that's in there, okay? And when I'm sanding right now, it's all that sawdust from the stock right here. It's mixing with this finish, and it's creating a mud. When you get to that point, you can take the palm of your hand and go right over the top of it, okay? Just like that. Go off to the side, do the same thing, okay? And this is pretty much what you're gonna do. You're gonna keep working your way up this stock, okay? Sand and finish, just like this. You're gonna get that mud going, just like that. Push over the top of it, okay? Push over the top of it. Now when I'm pushing this in like that right now, what I'm doing is I'm filling all the grain, all the pores and whatnot that are open on this stock, okay? So you can see this takes a little while, right? You're just gonna keep moving up, right? Gonna keep moving up. And what I like to do is I like to work on one side, and I break this up into parts, okay? So there's these 3 parts of the stock. I got both sides and the bottom, so I tend to work in that order. I do both sides and then the bottom. And that's basically what you're gonna do. What I'm doing right here, you're gonna work this whole stock all the way up, right even up to small of the grip right here, okay? You guys notice that as I'm sanding with the grain, okay? Very important, because as you're sanding this in here, you're putting those scratch marks in there as well, okay? And you're trying to keep the scratch marks and your sanding marks going in the same direction, okay? Because as you work your progressions up, you're gonna get those scratch marks out, okay? So that's basically what you'll do. You'll work up one side of the stock, okay, all the way up to the top, flip it over, work the other side of the stock, okay? Get on this side, work the bottom part of the stock, and then you're gonna set it aside after you've done that, after you've filled the grain. Now, normally when you fill the grain like that, you're able to come back the next day and sand again. And I did that with this side, okay? This side right here, I hope I can get this in because I don't have it edited, but this side right here, I did that yesterday, okay? I sanded and did all that, and I have all these mud marks right now that are going that way, okay? So you get these mud marks going that way, and for the sake of this demo, my grain, let's say after you've done this, it'll probably take you at least 2 or 3 times of doing that. Now, so this was 320, right? So after this dries, the next day you would come back with, say, a 400, and you would do the same thing with a 400, okay? Sand and fill, wet sand, sand and fill, okay, with a 400. And after it dries completely, next day, 2 days, something like that, you'll come back and you'll have those mud marks. You'll have these marks where it's the sand fill, the sawdust fill that's just gone into that grain. And you'll come back when you've got when it's completely filled, which is probably about 2, 3 maybe applications of doing the mud fill. You'll come back and you'll do the exact same thing with your sandpaper. Now you're gonna come back with your 400 and you're gonna lightly sand it, okay? You'll come back with your 400 and you will lightly sand it, okay? You'll go through, and don't worry about these little scratch marks and whatnot here because those come out, right? You'll go through and you'll lightly sand it, okay, with your 400 if that's where you want to end up at, okay? And that 400 will take out those scratch marks that you had in there yesterday, okay? Or 600, however high you want to go. It all depends on what you want to do, okay? If you stop at 320, sometimes you run the risk of having a little bit of some scratch marks in it. But if you give a good oil mixture, a lot of that will come out, okay? So this piece right here, we're gonna say that this piece is, say this represents the whole stock. This represents 4 sandings, 4 mud fill sandings, okay? And I have just sanded it at, say, a 600 grit or a 400 grit, okay? At that point in time, after I've sanded this whole stock, both sides with a 400 grit, the grains are completely filled, the grain is completely filled, right? And I've sanded both sides with a 400 grit. You're gonna have these little light spots and whatnot, that's fine, that's no big deal, that's nothing to worry about. What you're gonna do at that point is you're gonna use your oil finish. Just open here, let's do this one. That's when you apply your oil finish, okay? That's when you're gonna take your oil finish, you're gonna start applying that to the stock. That's when you're gonna take a little, you'll do the same thing, you do the same mixture, you'll do a 50-50 mixture with your oil finish, and you'll put it into a little container or something like this, right? And what you'll do at that point, there's already mineral spirits in here. So what you'll do at that point, you'll put a dot, just like that, okay? And you're gonna start rubbing that in, that oil finish in, okay? Now, the higher up that you go in finish, as far as your sandpaper, the further that little bit, the further that fingerprint will get you, okay? If you're up at like a 600 in sandpaper, before you apply your hand rubbed oil, if you're up like at a 600 in sandpaper, you'll be able, that one dot will get you pretty much one whole side of the stock. You know, maybe one up here, okay? But you'll start doing the same thing. You're just gonna hand rub this in, okay? And that's gonna start getting that, you can already kind of see a little bit of the finish that gets, okay? So this right here is at a 320. I normally would go up to 320, your laminate's gonna be okay. For walnut, you're probably gonna get up to about a 4, maybe a 600, you know, depending on how smooth you want it, you know? But that's basically what you're gonna do. You're gonna get one finger, put it like that, and then you're gonna rub it in. And you're just gonna rub that in. And that's basically how that works out. And you'll end up doing that up the whole side of the stock, okay? Flip it over, you'll do the other side of the stock, okay? So that's the basic way of doing it, and that's pretty much what I sent you guys in the video, the YouTube video that I sent a couple weeks ago, all right? This already looks better. I'm not even sure you can see that, but you know, it already looks pretty good just by doing that little part right there, okay? So let's review here real quick. So when you get ready to finish your stock, you're gonna go through, the first process is gonna be whiskering the stock. You're whiskering the stock, you're applying a 2/3 mineral spirits, a 1/3 finish, okay? Now, you can use this stuff. You can use you can use a finish right out of the can like this, okay, to stain the stock, to get that dark coloration in the stock, or whatever coloration you decide to go with. Okay, you can use your 2/3. You're gonna apply it to the stock. You're gonna go through and do your whiskering, where you're gonna apply heat to it. The whiskering and the heat, or the heat's gonna apply, the stock is gonna get it up so that it raises the grain, okay? The grain gets raised so that when you come back the next day and you're gonna sand fill all this grain that popped up the night before, what you're gonna do then is a 50-50 mix, okay? So sanding and filling the grain is a 50-50 mix. Whiskering the stock is a 2/3 mix, okay? 2/3 mineral spirits, 1/3 of your finish, okay? That's what sanding the grain does, okay? Or filling the grain, whiskering is, right? Sanding the grain is 50-50, okay? So once you do that and you've gone, say you started with a 220 and you filled the grain with a 220, the next day you would go to a 320. Sand and fill. Next day you would go with a 400. Sand one way, fill the other way, okay? And you eventually, probably by, like I say, by the 3rd time, you can't get it in 2 if you're gonna start off with a 220 and end with a 320, but for most wood stocks, it's gonna be about a 400. So you go to 220, 320, and by the time you get to the 400, most of all the sand marks and whatnot and the mud marks are gonna be gone, okay? And when they're all gone and you have sanded in the direction of the grain, you'll have your high spots, you'll have your little bright spots, I call them shine spots, you know? That is when you're gonna apply your oil finish, okay? Take your finger, apply on the one side, and you're gonna start rubbing that in, right? Now, the oil finish is depending on how far you want to go, really. Oil finish could be maybe 10 coats, could be 15 coats for a really mirror finish, okay? The oil finish is, and that's one of the things where you guys just kind of send me a photo or something like that and I'll take a look at it individually. But that is a basic way of how you're going to go about and sand, fill, and finish a stock. Works the same with walnut, same as laminate, okay? So I hope this answers a lot of your questions. I say this is my first video. The next ones are going to try and get to be a little bit more, produced in value. Please try and be on the conference call, the Zoom conference call meeting Friday at 12 noon. And any other questions that you have about this, I will be more than happy to answer. Keep in mind that, this is just trying to do the best we can with what we got, okay? Next week, I'm going to do a video on, I have a shotgun that has a pistol grip stock. I'm gonna remove the pistol grip stock and put it into a straight grip stock and put the recoil pad on it as well. So that's all something I'll put on there for that. Week after that, I'll do bedding of the stocks. I'm gonna bed a laminate stock like a lot of you guys have, and I'll put that video in it. And then the week after that, I have a rifle that I'm working on that I'm gonna kind of start going through the process of what I do to build a rifle. Try and get that out there as well, okay? So thank you very much. Let's try and make this work out as best we can. All right, way to go, guys.